Hello, Mac. Thank you for the wonderful seminar which we just conducted. And we had so many people. They had such interesting questions. First of all, thank you for coming down from Chicago.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
All right. So there's so many questions which were asked, and so many people weren't able to make it. There was like a storm warning out here, right?
Right.
So for their benefit and for the benefit of the people who were here, to encapsulate what they actually learned today, let's do a video of the top FAQs.
Absolutely.
All right.
Do it.
We have Section 8 subsidized housing. Can you tell me what is Section 8 subsidized housing?
Absolutely. So, Section 8 is essentially a federal program that is a US government program. And what they do in a nutshell is they subsidize income, rent income for low income families. So, what they do is they actually give the rental amounts to landlords who own assets, and on the behalf of the tenants, they pay them rents. So that is what Section 8 is. Section 8 is a major program in the US. The US government has a $39.2 billion program where they give rent subsidies, and Chicago gets actually a pretty good chunk of change for that, almost $1 billion a year.
So, do you think Section 8 subsidized housing would be better for investors than traditional rental?
I would think so, and I know why it is a better substitute, because it is first of all guaranteed by the US government on the first of every month, whether it's rain, shine, whether the US is in a recession or whether it's at war. The first of every month, the government will deposit funds into your account. The second reason is that it's consistent with the market rates. So you are getting actually, if not the same, at least a 10 to 15% also differential, like a better rent.
A higher rent.
A higher rent.
And why would they give you a higher rent?
Because they want to make sure that investors are not shying away from renting to low income families. So they offer it as an incentive in some ways.
Awesome. So a landlord typically makes more.
Yes.
Now, if they're subsidized, wouldn't that be risky?
It's not. The reason is that the program is very well regulated. There are policies, procedures, and regulations actually both for the tenant and the owners. So they have to basically abide by certain rules in terms of keeping the house in a good shape, making sure it's not vandalized, and so on. Because if they do, they have basically violation notices sent to them, and ultimately which results in a voucher termination, which is a subsidy termination.
You were mentioning something about a voucher being equivalent to a lottery ticket.
When
Tell us more.
it is. So think about it. If any family that gets Section 8 essentially gets lifetime of free rent. There are certain obviously qualifications that they have to kind of pass, but generally once a family is on Section 8, they stay in Section 8 unless something material changes in terms of their income or household size and so on. So no one wants to squander that chance. Everyone wants to make sure that what they are getting is what they consistently get over time.
We just happened to witness the circus which went on with Trump closing down the government. What if there's a US government shutdown? What would happen to the rents?
It does not affect it because we manage hundreds of properties for other investors as well. And while that is a very substantial thing that is happening, I know that the rent subsidies are all coming in for the owners. Like I said, on the first of every month, everyone is getting it. So unless something materially changes in terms of how Section 8 is funded or what happens to the program, pretty much it has been working for the last couple of decades, and I foresee it working for the next couple of decades as well.
All right. So one of the participants had a question. What if there's a recession in the market? What will happen to our properties?
In some ways, it's insulated, right? So the market rent is fixed in some ways. So it is consistent. So if there is a recession and say people lose jobs, think about it, a traditional tenant would actually have difficulty paying because he or she would lose their jobs. In Section 8, on the other hand, it's actually in some ways beneficial because they're getting a subsidy regardless. So the government is backing that rent for the owner and guaranteeing it regardless of whether there's a recession, there's a war going on, or anything else from a macro perspective.
A lot of my clients are based in Canada. How often would they need to travel to the USA?
Almost none, unless I highly encourage come there, for sightseeing and all. But as far as your investment is concerned, there's really no reason for you to consistently come there. In fact, that's the whole idea behind our management philosophy, that it's a turnkey solution. You buy the asset, you register the company, you transfer the funds, you have title under your name or your company's name, and we take 100% care from tenant management to the property management. We're taking all the calls, we're transferring the rent and so on. The only one time that you may have to come to the US is to open up a US bank account, because the government will only deposit funds into a US bank, not a Canadian bank. So that's one visit.
So you mentioned about complete turnkey property management. How much does that cost? What is the fee?
It is a flat fee, so we don't charge a percentage of the rent or so on. It's $99 per month per unit. It's very simple, transparent pricing, and it covers everything. If there are any incidentals that are, say, expenses, then you are notified in advance. So say if there is a toilet that needs to be fixed, we will send you photographs, we will send you videos, you will see it, we will give you advanced notification of what the cost is, and then we will go ahead and do the work and charge you accordingly.
Very well. So $99 covers everything.
Everything.
You also mentioned that the properties which you provide, or the list of properties which you would provide, you'd cover any capital costs for a period of 5 years in case if that happens.
Correct. So anything that is major. So say if you buy a house today and the roof has a problem, we will cover it. We give you a written guarantee that these properties are screened, they're well maintained, they are registered with the City of Chicago, and they have passed all the inspections that are needed to ensure that they could be rented out to a Section 8 tenant.
So talking about normal wear and tear, typical repairs and maintenance, in your opinion, how much are they, for the entire year?
Entire year, you're talking about anywhere from $1,600 to about $2,200 a year.
Okay. And the sheet which we will send to whoever's interested does talk about these costs.
Absolutely.
And
So
capture these costs.
the repair and maintenance costs, the property management fees, the property taxes, they're all factored in the total expenses. So what you see on the sheet is a net ROI. The only thing that is missing and is optional is essentially property insurance, in case you want to get it.
Right. Otherwise, everything else is
Everything
covered,
is covered.
including capital costs for the next 5 years.
Absolutely.
That is such a wonderful, incentive for the buyers.
Absolutely.
How much do these properties cost typically?
So they typically range anywhere from 75,000 to 150,000, and that is the entire purchase price of the property. These are generally detached homes, so this is almost something that you would probably never see in Canada. So you're buying a full detached home for that price.
One of the properties in your list is even listed at $65,000.
Exactly.
That is a steal.
That is absolutely. And all of the properties at a minimum you will see are at least doing net ROI of 10%.
Wonderful. Okay. Now we say net ROI of 10%, but what is the gross ROI? What is the typical rental returns?
So generally you are seeing the gross as high as about 23 to 25, right? And remember, these are cash numbers. So this is basically if you're putting all cash down. If you are leveraging it, that is if you're financing it, financing typically requires a 50% down. So at 5% interest rates, the numbers will also be seen on the sheet that we sent, would roughly hit about 35% also. So
And that is without any capital appreciation.
exactly, that is a key point. Absolutely, that is taking into provision that essentially the numbers are staying flat, which don't, right? The property itself is appreciating over time as well.
So, talking about capital appreciation, how much do you foresee, or what has been the history?
Chicago, as an average, the greater Chicago land, as it's called, is 3.4. But specifically in this area, as you would see any other place where, if say a house in Toronto is worth 400,000, if a developer says I'm going to do a series of townhomes for 400,000, that townhouse is going to appreciate at a much faster rate than say a $1 million or $2 million detached home, and that is what it is here. So even though in the broader context it's about 3 to 4%, the Chicago properties in the area that we are investing in are roughly hitting about 8 to 10%.
Wow,
Right.
8 to 10%.
So there is a massive equity gain, absolutely. But I do want to highlight that what we really focus on is the cash flow aspect of things, not the equity. The equity, I feel, is there, and there are several geographical reasons as to why properties on the southern side of Chicago are going to appreciate back to their pre-2008 levels, which is about anywhere from $350 to about $400,000.
So, a property which is bought for 120 has the potential to become $300,000 to $400,000.
Because that's where they were before 2008 when the housing crisis happened.
Oh wow, that's a considerable amount of appreciation. But you advise your clients not to look at that. That's the cherry on top. If
That's
it happens,
the cherry on the top. If
right.
it happens, it happens. But really, the rental returns are so handsome by themselves that it's a fantastic way to build consistent, reliable, safe cash flow.
All right. Now, talking about pricing the properties, the sheet which you'd have, how are they priced? Do we have comparables to go by? How does it happen? How do I know whether I'm paying the right price for the property?
Absolutely. So these are based on market prices, similar to essentially a CMA assessment. This is how they are priced. In fact, if you kind of evaluate and do your own due diligence, this is almost, think of it as an investor price list, which is what an investor would pay for rental investment properties. And by world standards, an investor typically pays 30% less than what a market rate would be. So they are essentially also undervalued at what they could be, say, if you sell it in the open market to an end user. So I feel that there is also an advantage there from that perspective. So just to give you, one of the homes that we have right now, which I believe is listed for 65, the CMA for that is about 101,000.
101,000. Okay. So you're getting a deal when you purchase it. You're getting a virtually guaranteed cash flow. You're getting property management.
And instant essentially gain, right, from what the market would pay for something like that.
Now, there's so many cities in the USA. Why Chicago?
Number of reasons. Number one, third most populous city. It is the busiest airport in US. 53 million people visit Chicago every year. It's home to 30 plus Fortune 500 companies. From an investor perspective, 68% of people in the area that we invest in are renting. So, and then from a Section 8 perspective, Chicago is actually, if not the number one, at least in the top 3 cities where a lot of Section 8 activity happens. So 66,000 people are currently on the Section 8 program, with an estimated 268,000 people on the waiting list. So imagine you've got a massive demand that has not been met by the supply that is available currently in the market. So it's a win-win on every platform. I've personally studied other markets like Detroit, Buffalo, I've studied Bakersfield, I've studied Houston, and I've seen that Chicago, because of its diversity and its economy as well, is also the best place to kind of invest for this kind of rental market.
Now, talking about rental and investments, there's always some risk involved. What's the worst case, doomsday scenario?
The US government would decide that, you know what, we are not entertaining any Section 8 or not doing any subsidies, rental subsidies. And that's, a legitimate worst case doomsday scenario that could happen. But, that means millions of people are going to be on the streets without the subsidy. There would be a civil war that would break out. And I don't foresee it, at least in the next couple of decades.
Awesome. All right. Now, as a Canadian, would you be able to get a mortgage on these properties, or they'd have to be cash based?
So it's a two-tier answer. Yes, you can get a mortgage. Canadian banks generally would want you to take a line of credit because the amounts are not crazy high. Let's say an investment in Toronto would cost. So one option is that. Banks like RBC and I believe TD as well give you a mortgage to essentially buy a US property. In addition, there would be B lenders in the US that would finance it to Canadians as well. Generally, the rule for a US lending institution would be at least a 50% down. However, having said that, I would say that the first property, at least the first couple of properties that you should buy, try to buy it on cash. And the reason is that if you have a US asset that you own under your name, US banks would be more willing then to lend you money for your next couple of investments. Even if you have a $2 million home here in Canada, for the US bank it doesn't matter because they don't have the jurisdiction that they would say as a US bank on a US property that they would have here. So that's what I would recommend.
So thank you for your wonderful answers. What's the procedure? If somebody is interested, a person watching this video from Canada is interested, what should they do?
I would say number one, connect with Hussain. Send in your contact, your name, your email. If you already have the list, great. Then send us the name or the address of the property rather in which you are interested, and we will try to hold it for you. If not, reach out to Hussain anyways. He will send you all the materials including the worksheet and give us your budget, and then we will tell you what the steps are. As I said, it's a turnkey process. It does not require a lot of effort from your end. We do all the heavy lifting for you in terms of registering your company and so on.
So walk me through that. Now I'm interested. I want to see a property XYZ priced at $90,000. What happens now? What do I do?
Absolutely. So once you have given the information to Hussain and everything, what we will do is we will help you register a company, an LLC, because that is the best vehicle to own an asset. So you get the LLC registered. It takes generally less than 24 hours to register a company and roughly about $600 to set one up. Then essentially what you do is you select the company, you select the property that you're interested in. We will do the paperwork for the title and everything. We will transfer the title under your name from the seller to you as the buyer once the funds are deposited, and then we will register you with the Section 8 housing, with CHA and the government to ensure that you receive the rent, going forward. And here's the best part. As soon as you do the purchase, you are getting rent the very next day. You're not waiting for a month or 2 months or 3 months. These properties are all rented out. They are good to go. There is no work that needs to be done on these properties.
So what are the typical purchase expenses? You said $600 for the LLC.
Generally, the closing cost will vary anywhere from, I would say, about $800 to about $2,500. And really that covers everything from your title transfer to your lawyer cost and so on. So you're, worst case scenario, you're thinking about $2,500 to the purchase price that you would add, plus, your company registration and all that as well. You open up a bank account by coming into the US because that's where your money is deposited. And like I said, the government pays you directly in your bank account.
Would the accountant charge a yearly fee to keep your LLC running, Nothing
There's
so-
no charge to keep it running per se, but you do have to file taxes every year, just like you would in Canada. And the accountant would have, obviously their fees for that, and they're very typical. What you would say pay for a corporation. If I'm not mistaken, it could be anywhere from 600 to about 800 a year that you would pay, and that would include your filing and everything else.
All right. Thank you so much for this information. I hope it's useful. I'm sure it is. And if anyone's interested, I have all my details below. Please get in touch with me. And thank you.
Thank you so much.